Hey, what's up? My name is Pietro Paolo Michele Solomone, and today we're going to be talking about verb moods in Spanish. All right. Now, in Spanish, there are three verb moods: the indicative, the subjunctive, and the imperative. Now, before I go through each one of them, I just want to describe for you what is verb mood. Okay? The verb mood tells you how the speaker presents the action. The speaker can present the action of the verb as a fact, as certain, as real, or the speaker may refuse to assert what the verb stands for. Okay? Or sometimes the speaker can just issue a command, a request, an instruction. Okay? So the mood is the speaker's stance toward the action of the verb. Okay? A verb describes something. It can talk about an action. All right? And the speaker can present the action of the verb as fact, or as certain, as real, or the speaker may refuse to present the action of the verb as certain, as true, as fact. Okay? So now, what is the indicative mood? The indicative mood, called el indicativo in Spanish, the indicative mood, okay, called indicativo in Spanish. Okay, I call this mood the mood of assertion. Okay, that's when the speaker asserts the action of the verb. That's when the speaker asserts the information that he or she is presenting as true, as fact. For instance, if I say, she works here, she works here. All right? I'm presenting this information as true. So I am asserting this information, this proposition. She works here. All right? So therefore, in Spanish, that would be ella trabaja, works, trabaja aquí. Alright, ella trabaja aquí. She works here. So I use the indicative because I assert this information. I'm presenting this information as real. Okay? Therefore, the verb, which is works, I use the verb in the indicative mood because the indicative mood is the mood of assertion. The second mood I want to talk about is the subjunctive mood. Subjunctive. Okay? In Spanish, they said subjuntivo. Okay? The subjunctive mood is not about time, reality, feelings, emotions. It's about whether the speaker, whoever's speaking, commits to a proposition as factual. Okay? I call the subjunctive, this is how I call it, the mood of non-assertion. The mood of non-assertion. That's the way I call the subjunctive. Okay? The subjunctive is not used because something is uncertain. Nope. The subjunctive is used when the speaker refuses to accept a proposition as factual. That's when it's used. The speaker is not ready to assert the proposition yet as factual. Okay? And that proposition is expressed through a conjugated verb. When they're talking about subjunctive, when we're talking about the subjunctive mood in Spanish, we're talking about a conjugated verb. Okay? The verb means something. The verb transmits some kind of idea, a proposition, and the speaker refuses to assert what the verb means, what the verb stands for. Okay? Let me give you an example. If I say, I believe she speaks Spanish. Okay? I believe she speaks Spanish. If you look at what's written, I'm presenting something as true. What is it that I'm presenting as true? Speaks. A conjugated verb. She speaks. Okay? This is what I'm presenting as true. The idea that she speaks Spanish. Okay? That's what I'm presenting as true, as a fact. By looking at the sentence, you can tell that I stand behind this information because I say, I believe she speaks Spanish. So, creo, indicative, because I'm expressing my belief. I'm expressing how I feel in the moment. Okay? Creo, I believe, que ella habla español. Okay, what is it that I believe? What is it that I'm presenting as certain? Habla. That's what I'm presenting as certain, that she speaks Spanish. That's the information, that's the proposition I am asserting. Therefore, speaks is in the indicative mood in Spanish. Now check this out. If I say, I do not believe that she speaks Spanish. Okay? I do not believe. Still, I'm expressing how I feel. That's the indicative mood. But what is it that I don't believe? I don't believe she speaks. Okay? I am not asserting yet that she speaks. I refuse to assert that she speaks. Okay? I refuse to present she speaks as certain. Therefore, in Spanish, she speaks is going to be in the subjunctive because the speaker, whoever is speaking, say, I don't believe. What is it that the speaker doesn't believe? That she speaks. You see? The speaker is raising doubt over she speaks. Then this conjugated verb cannot be in the indicative in Spanish because the speaker is not asserting that she speaks. The speaker refuses to assert that she speaks. Therefore, it's going to go into the subjunctive mood. Oh, yes. So, I don't believe is going to be no creo que ella hable español. Now, maybe she speaks Spanish very well, but the speaker is not asserting that she speaks Spanish. The speaker says, I don't believe. What is it that the speaker doesn't believe? She speaks. That's what the speaker doesn't believe. Then you can't put it in the indicative in Spanish. It has to go to the subjunctive mood because you are not asserting that she speaks. You have doubt over the fact that she speaks. What you don't believe is she speaks. That's what you don't believe. Therefore, Spanish says that since you don't believe, whatsoever you don't believe that is expressed through a conjugated verb, it goes to the subjunctive mood because you're not asserting it. That's why we say, no creo que ella hable. Hable is subjunctive. Here, in the first sentence, the speaker believes that she speaks Spanish. The speaker is asserting that she speaks Spanish. Then she speaks is indicative. But in the second sentence, the speaker refuses to assert that she speaks Spanish. The speaker refuses to present the proposition of her speaking Spanish as certain. Then the speaker says, you know what? It's got to go. This conjugated verb, which is the heart of the proposition, has to go to the subjunctive. That's what I mean by when you assert something and when you don't assert it. The third mood I want to talk about is the imperative mood. Imperative mood. All right. In Spanish, they call it el imperativo. Imperativo. Okay. It's a mood used to give commands, to give instructions, to request things. For instance, if I say ven acá, that's very popular. Ven acá means come here. Okay, come here. Ven acá. That's a command. If I say siéntate, sit down. If I say work here, trabaja aquí. Trabaja aquí. Okay, work here. These are commands. Okay. One more thing I want to say to end this video. I want to mention tense. When we're talking about tense, we're talking about when the action happens. When the action happens. Okay, that's the tense. When you're talking about verbs, you're talking about, when you're talking about verbs. Person. Person is who does the action. Okay, who does the action. Okay, that's what we're talking about. When we're talking about mood, verb mood, we're talking about how the speaker, whoever's speaking, frames the action of the verb. Okay, so mood, the mood is in the head of the speaker. Okay, the speaker can look at something and thinks that it's indicative. Another one may looks at it and thinks that it's subjunctive. Okay, so it all depends on the individual. Okay, so that's the way I wanted to end this video. One more thing is, in English we generally use the indicative mood and the imperative mood, whereas in Spanish they use all three moods equally. Okay, they use the indicative mood heavily, the subjunctive every day, the imperative every day heavily. So the three moods in Spanish are commonly used, are widely used, are very popular, and it is extremely difficult to achieve fluency in Spanish if you don't master the verb moods. Okay, so if you want to sound natural, you want to speak Spanish very well, it's very important to master the verbs, the moods, understand all of these things. Okay, enough talking. This was an introduction, so next time I will be uploading multiple videos on verbs and moods and tenses and things like that. But what I want you to understand is, in Spanish, the verbs carry more weight than in English. Okay, so much so, there are times in Spanish, if you use the wrong mood, you change the meaning of the sentence, or you collapse the meaning of the sentence. Okay, so it's extremely important, and that's also one of the reasons that I'm teaching this in English. It's very important to understand these things in your own language. I don't know how else to stress it. It is extremely important to understand verbs, verb moods, and certain topics, to learn them in your own language first before you move on to speak Spanish. Okay, because the reason for that is there are certain ways we speak in English, they don't speak like that in Spanish. There are certain structures we have in English, they do not exist in Spanish. So when we think in English, thinking of the structures we have and translate based on those structures that don't exist in Spanish, whatever we translate to Spanish, it's never going to come out right. You see what I'm saying? So you're going to hear from me a lot of explanations in English. And then eventually we'll move to, practicing some Spanish. All right, my friends, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego. Bye.